BionicDance is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
And this is going to be questions for atheists.
Ah, good. There hasn't been a decent Q&A video in ages. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. One thing we used to see quite often back when the YouTube theist community looked a lot like the atheist community, or at least when it was as plentiful and as entertaining, was Q&A videos, people asking a list of questions to the folks on the other side. I miss those. Well, today we've got ourselves a new set. And they actually are kind of new. They're not the same old recycled fodder. So, let's get to it.
These are going to be honest questions that I really have about atheism, so please answer them. And I would like you to please answer the questions that I'm asking, not the questions you think I'm asking.
Well, the thing is, there's a little bit of a hitch. Some of these questions are at least a little bit off. They make some incorrect assumptions, and that makes answering the question asked, well, impossible. So some of my answers may seem like they're not answering the question asked, but what they actually are is corrections.
So let me ask question number 1. Okay, you ready? Okay. So, do you, as an atheist, have a problem with theists or even fellow atheists lumping agnostics and anti-theists in with you?
Not even slightly. The problem is the other way around, when people try to separate those groups from atheism. Atheism is a broad category. As long as the number of gods you believe in is 0, you're an atheist. Agnosticism is one of many reasons for atheism. I'm an atheist because I'm agnostic. Religious people have not managed to be convincing in their reasons for belief in a deity. They've provided insufficient information, and thus I do not believe, making me an atheist. But I also lack sufficient information to say for certain there isn't a God. And yet, still I do not believe. The number of gods I believe in remains 0, and so I'm an atheist. It's my experience that most people who self-identify as agnostics do so because they don't want the stigma of the atheist label and not due to their level of belief, or lack thereof. As for anti-theists, I'm pretty sure most of them don't believe in gods either. It's not impossible to believe a god is real and that it's a horrible thing, but I think it's far less common than thinking a god being real would stink, and they're glad it's not so. So you've got it backward. I find myself grumpy when they try to say they're not atheists.
Okay, question number 2. Now, not talking of Christians here, but do you have a problem with atheists who try to turn atheism into a religion?
I don't know any atheists who do that, but yeah, that would make me cranky.
Do you feel that that hurts your argument against religion?
Well, look at it this way. Does your Catholicism being a religion hurt your argument that yours is right and other religions aren't? You can call atheism a religion all you like, but that doesn't matter, because atheists who do debate the topic are pointing out facts that show how claims of religions, or other religions if atheism being one is insisted upon, do not hold up against critical scrutiny. That is the argument. What you want to call it matters very little unless the people on the other side are going to use the label currently in vogue to strawman that argument, to dodge the points being made.
Do you consider yourself anti-religious?
That's not a yes-no question. Not for me. Because the underlying assumption seems to be that I argue against religion because I don't think it's true. But for me, that's not the case. For me, this is more activism than philosophy. See, a lot of religious people act like royal jerkwads and justify that behavior using their holy text. I don't much care for this, and thus I try to show them that their religion isn't true, thus removing their justification for their atrocities, showing them that they are responsible for their bigotry and misbehavior. It helps that I really do think their religion isn't true, but if you're religious and treat other people with dignity and respect, well, I'll still think your beliefs are goofy, but the worst you'll get from me is the occasional eye roll.
Question number 4. When a spiritualist or a supernaturalist claim to be an atheist, does this bother you? Do you see the same logical inconsistencies that non-atheists see in this stance, in their point of view?
I admit it does make me twitch a little. I mean, my lack of God belief is due in large part to the apparent absence of anything supernatural in this world. My reasons for not believing in ghosts, fortune-telling, past lives, and horoscopes are the same for why I don't believe in religion. But atheism refers solely to God belief, and if the number of gods those people believe in is 0, they still qualify. I suppose atheism could fit under or overlap an even broader category regarding absence of belief in the supernatural, but that's a topic for another time.
Question number 5. Why do so many of the YouTube atheists argue against an idea of God that is childish and nothing like what anyone with a mature faith actually believes?
Well, this makes a few assumptions that, frankly, make the question rather difficult to answer, if not impossible. Because what makes a faith mature? How does one distinguish one from the other? I mean, no offense, but they all sound rather childish to me. I mean, come on, you can dress it up however you like, but you're still believing in a magical Uber being. It still sounds like you're believing in Mega Santa. And you're doing it on faith instead of the sort of facts we would require for belief in the existence of absolutely anything else. I understand you think that one version of faith might be more mature than the other, but the fairy tale factor is one of degree, not kind. And the arguments against it don't need to be any different. If you think otherwise, then this question needed to include a detailed illustration of the difference between mature and childish faith.
I feel like, this is my personal opinion here, I feel like it is because when you quit believing, or when you realize you didn't believe, it was while you were still a child, or while you were spiritually or theologically naive.
Which means you think that the problem is on our end and not your own. We see this a lot with religious people. There's a tendency to start with the assumption of being right, that anybody who doesn't agree must be wrong. The possibility that it might be their philosophy that's the problem and people's reactions to it are completely justified just doesn't seem to be considered.
It makes someone sound foolish and bigoted when they attack beliefs that no one actually holds, and that even informed or well-read believers would argue against.
Have you heard the way most theists describe atheism? Have you heard how creationists characterize evolution and mix it up with abiogenesis? Have you heard the arguments they try to make to convince atheists their God is real? Your side isn't blameless on this one. But again, which arguments are these that these so-called well-read believers wouldn't make? Because if those well-read believers making new arguments exist, they're keeping themselves very well hidden.
I have been watching YouTube for over 9 years. And during those 9 years, I have been subscribed to different skeptic and atheist channels for long stretches of time.
Oh, really? Like which ones?
From Armor Skeptic and Shoe on Head to Undoomed, who's awesome, honestly, to Thunderfoot and Sargon, until both of them had their dramatic whatevers. Then I unsubscribed from them very quickly. Even Godless Cranium I was subscribed to for a while, and Hugo and Jake are just fun to listen to. Hearing them read the Bible, I mean, come on. You've never been able to convince me when it comes to atheism about anything. Mostly because what you argue against are the things that religious people, who are intelligent and well-informed, just don't believe.
And again, I have to ask what those things are, because frankly, I suspect we do address them. You just don't like the way we do it. Prove me wrong. And again, back at you. I've yet to see a theist make a case for their religion's truth that would convince a critical thinker. The illogic required to believe a religion's truth simply won't allow it. In the end, theism requires faith instead of facts, requires unfounded belief in the supernatural, and that's where it hits the fatal stumbling block. And frankly, I can't remember the last time I heard a theist make a new argument for a God's existence. And those arguments all make certain assumptions regarding one's audience. Their arguments all seem to be made to convince believers. They don't actually address an atheist's reasons for unbelief. That might need correcting if your goal is to convince an atheist that your religion isn't just superstition with some rabid and screaming fanboys. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. Vote me down and I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.